Hi, it's Vince Barnes from Intergroup Australia. We're international freight forwarders and customs brokers. Um, I've been involved in international trade for 47 years now, and I'm joined by Rob Naumovski, who's our freight manager, everything freight, and he's a well-travelled and experienced campaigner and part of our business. How are you, Rob?
Hello, Vince. How are you? Hello, everyone. Yes, I've been in the industry myself for just on 28 years, experienced all facets of our industry: import, export, sea freight, air freight, perishables, dangerous goods, you name it. I've handled it, as has Vince, as is our team here.
I, we've elected to have a chat about Incoterms, which Incoterms control what happens in an international trade agreement or sale. And I'm amazed at how many people who are involved with international trade in various positions still don't have a great feel or understanding why Incoterms are really important. And they dictate the terms of sale and who's responsible for what in the transaction. And it still puzzles me how many people don't have a grasp on what that means. So we're going to cover off some of the more common ones used in international trade, and hopefully we'll pass on some information that might be of some value to someone. The first one we'll pick is a term what's called Ex Works, and this is where the two parties, the consignor and the consignee, agree on how the sale is going to proceed. And what Ex Works means is that the shipper of the goods, the consignor, is handing over the goods of sale basically from their premises to their client, to the consignee. From that aspect, the the consignee has the option then of picking up the goods from the people they're buying from, and from that point onwards, the consignee is in charge and in control of the transaction. They can make the decisions on how goods move from the factory, how they get handled through the country of origin, the mode that they go through, and all the elements that go forward. And also, the consignee is also in charge of the costs thereafter. I might throw to Rob to consider some of those options that might be included in a Ex Works scenario. So, what are some of the things that a consignee can take up in an Ex Works scenario, Rob?
Well, firstly, you are correct. A lot of clients who I deal with don't necessarily understand that they can control their shipment. They only think that sometimes once it arrives in Australia, they can take ownership and control of it. So it's a good point you raise. Um, Things they can control is, do they want to use a particular agent? What transport they would like to use? The loading, the packing of the material, the customs procedures. They will control pretty much, or they will set the tone to control all aspects from the door of the shipper.
And I mean, also things like the document set required, that can be quite a number. And maybe I'll let Rob expand on that too. There's quite a few documents that can be involved in international trade.
Well, correct. There is such things as certificate of origins, which help with free trade agreements to minimise or eliminate duties upon arrival into Australia, depending on the goods, what the goods are in value. Getting cargo fumigated offshore is usually a lot cheaper than getting it done here. So we strongly suggest that that is taken up by the consignee as well, that they can talk to a service provider they have there, or engage us to contact our agent to arrange this on their behalf. Ultimately, the client here understands all the costs associated, um, and he can also negotiate cost here as well.
Also, Rob, you touched on the point of how the goods can ship, and the mode of shipping and how that happens. It allows the consignee to uh, pick up services that they want. Now, if there's no urgency, they can maybe seek a cheaper rate on a what's called a transshipment service, and that's their option to do so. But if they have a specific date target to meet, they may insist on having what's called a direct service, where ship that the cargo gets loaded on overseas is the same ship that it arrives on in Australia. It's called a direct service. So there's all sorts of things that the consignee can then make their mind up on how the goods move.
Great point, Vince. There's also the understanding of costs associated once it lands in Australia as well. Now, if you do not send it in this under these terms, Ex Works terms, the supplier, whomever they choose to use to ship the goods, will also control, believe it or not, the rates what are associated here to an extent, because they are using their own preferred service provider to dictate the cost associated when it arrives here. Whereas if it's Ex Works, the consignee controls it. In extension, we do on their behalf. We use friendly agents, friendly local agents here as well, and we've got agreed rates already in place, and the consignee is fully aware of what these charges are before the shipment actually departs. When it's not sent this way, they could be in for a rude awakening, and unfortunately, we have no control over this.
Yeah, that you're quite right, Rob. And we've seen instances, and we see it every year. It crops up a number of times where someone has left everything to the other end to arrange. When it gets to Australia, it's been what looks like an economical service at the other end, and they go with it, only to be taken up by the pirates of the Caribbean here at this end, and it's big dollars this end, and it ends up costing thousands more than anticipated. So it can be a trap for the unwary. To be in control, and as you said, Rob, to be able to have a quote that tells you what those costs are, can be pretty important. Would also say that it gives you the option too. We have a customer that assembles machinery overseas. They get the goods from various suppliers of equipment, and it needs to be made up to a particular Australian client specification. They're able to bring the goods together and able to put those goods into an assembly that they need before it ships. Saves time and allows the goods to be unitized, so when it's delivered at this end, it's a much simpler process. So there's a couple of examples of why being in control as much as you can in international trade, really important. One other thing, the insurance question. If you're ever subject to a marine insurance claim, the first thing the underwriters are always going to ask, what were the terms of sale?
Correct.
And that is a really important question, because depending on the terms of sale, depends on where ownership is transferred. So it's really important. And with Ex Works terms, that generally that transfer usually occurs once the goods are handed over from the factory door to the consignee here in Australia.
So you are absolutely correct there, and I would add a little bit to that if I can, Vince, by
Yep.
suggesting sometimes consignees here they see it as the easier option, just to buy the goods, cost included, ship it here, no questions asked.
Yes.
Whilst to an extent that is correct, it is relatively not really fair on the consignee, and we encourage the consignee to seek costs where we can assist and provide costs to arrange it as an Ex Works shipment. And again, because just to touch on a point you just made a couple of seconds ago, the supplier no doubt would have favourable freight terms and local origin costs, which are going to be minimal for them because they've maybe got strong relationships,
Yes.
etc. What they cannot control, again, I'll emphasise, cannot control the destination charges here, which a consignee is going to be subject to, because their nominated friendly agent at origin may have a local agent here who charges a fortune, and that's something again we cannot assist with.
Yeah, and as I said, Rob, we see it a number of times a year, don't we?
We do indeed, and we have on numerous occasions, Vince. I do recall a particular furniture company who was sending it as on prepaid terms, which we'll touch on a little bit later on. And we were able to encourage them and to explain to them clearly and show them the figures to suggest that moving it as Ex Works is in their best interests because costs are down. We believe we can control the costs more. They are set unless there's anything unforeseen, and also we control the shipment from door to door. Basically,
It gives the client
it
control.
does. It does.
It really does. Um, we could probably go on for another half hour with this, but I think we've
No
given
doubt.
a good oversight there, and hopefully we've given a bit of useful intel for people to consider when they're looking at these options. And as always, we always encourage if you've got a question in this area of business, ask. Even if you think it's a really basic question, I guarantee you quite often you'll be surprised at the answer you'll get.